Well, the coronavirus pandemic has sent the medical sector scrambling for treatments, testing, and vaccines. And joining us now to break down the latest developments in this space is Allison Gatlin. She's tech reporter at Investors Business Daily. Thanks for joining me today, Allison.
Absolutely, Alyssa. Thanks for inviting me.
All right, so obviously coronavirus taking center stage here, and eyes are all focused on the medical sector and what we can do to start getting our lives back to normal. So what stands out to you the most in terms of what we're seeing right now in the medical sector?
What I find most interesting about the medical sector now is that companies are teaming up, they're partnering, and they're really accelerating what they have in their pipelines already to come up with a treatment or a vaccine. So, we have the FDA kind of getting behind this with new guidelines that can help companies expedite their testing. We have companies like Moderna, companies like Johnson & Johnson that are advancing vaccines quite rapidly. Within a span of, I believe it was 63 days for Moderna, they received the sequence of the they received the sequence of the virus, and they were able to translate that into a potential vaccine and start dosing humans within 63 days. Johnson & Johnson said that they plan to have a vaccine candidate available early next year. And, normally that process would take 5 to 7 years.
Right. And it seems like really all hands are on deck. Like you said, these timelines being accelerated. And also another issue when it comes to the testing aspect. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I know there's a lot of buzz around getting people tested and complications that can be presented in terms of the supply chain for not only the testing side, but also even on the treatment side, maybe.
Right, exactly. Well, testing has been kind of a thorn in the side of the United States for a long time. We've worked very hard over the last month or so to ramp up testing. They had 2 tests that were authorized in the very beginning. The FDA uses an emergency use authorization, which essentially allows companies that don't have an approved product to market that product in times of emergency. This classifies as that. So we went from 2 tests up to north of 24 over the span of a month. And that was an incredible pace for these companies. Like treatments, like vaccines, it can take some time to put together a test and actually go through the FDA process. So this is much more rapid than it would normally be. We have companies like Abbott Laboratories. They came out with news in the last week or so regarding their 5-minute point of care test. Now, Abbott has 2 tests on the market for coronavirus, specifically looking at SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19. There are other companies like Quest Diagnostics, Roche, they have tests on the market using these emergency use authorizations from the FDA. But the supply chain is obviously a problem because there are reagents, there are nasal swabs, there are pieces of the test that you need that, if they're coming from places like China, we have a hard time getting a hold of those, which can make testing a little slower than we would like.
Right. And with so much attention on this space from an investor perspective, what are you hearing in terms of what we're seeing with the companies that are expected to benefit the most, if at all, financially from their coronavirus related initiatives?
The financial part of this is really difficult to gauge, and it's for several reasons. This form of coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, it causes COVID-19. COVID-19, as far as today goes, has 1.08 million cases confirmed across the globe. But we don't know if it's endemic in our population. And what I mean by that is, if we wipe it out now, will it come back? Is it something that eventually becomes like a cold or a flu that seasonally we experience this, it crops up at times, and we have to take care of it then. If it becomes endemic in our population, we could see some companies benefit. Companies that come up with vaccines, companies that come up with treatments could benefit financially because they would have a recurring population of patients for their products. The other question we have to answer is, does the virus mutate? Experts are kind of split on this, whether, the virus does mutate, and if it does, will it happen rapidly or will it happen over the course of time? If a vaccine works now, will it work in the future? That's the biggest question that we have to answer. If the virus changes year after year, we have to look for ways to change that vaccine year after year. And that would be a money-making opportunity for those companies.
So it seems like it's more of a speculation game for investors in the short term with the wild action that we can see. What should investors be aware of when they're looking to invest in some of these medical plays when it comes to COVID-19?
There's a lot of headline risk here. We're looking at companies like Gilead and Moderna. They come out with news every few weeks or so. There are analyst reports. There's a lot of speculation. Will this drug work? Will this vaccine work? And, truth be told, we don't know at this point. A lot of these companies are going into earlier stage studies. And, it might look good in phase 1, which is a test in healthy volunteers, but maybe, down the road in phase 2 and phase 3, when we have to determine, is it effective, it might not pan out. So, in the near term, what we're looking for are companies like Gilead to have data from their clinical studies of remdesivir. So remdesivir is a failed Ebola virus treatment, but Gilead was very, I don't want to say fortunate, but their timing was great because they had already run clinical studies earlier stage in healthy volunteers for remdesivir. They were able to move the drug into phase 2 and phase 3 testing fairly quickly in COVID-19, or excuse me, in SARS-CoV-2. So they were able to run those studies very quickly. Right now, we're waiting on news from Gilead. Did this drug actually succeed? Was it effective in these patients who have moderate or severe symptoms of COVID-19? And if it's effective, to what degree? And that's what we're waiting on right now. Whether that study pans out, whether this drug actually works, could send Gilead skyrocketing or diving, because it's very volatile. Biotech tends to be very volatile anyway, but this news has everybody really on edge. And so what we're waiting for is, did this drug succeed? The same thing with Moderna. We're looking at this very quick time span that they were able to turn over their vaccine into an actual product for clinical testing. So now they've begun studies in healthy volunteers, which is phase 1. Well, phase 1 takes 12 to 18 months. So down the road, we're looking for Moderna to have news on whether that study actually succeeded. If it did, they could potentially, with the FDA's help, move this very quickly through clinical testing and through an expedited approval. But, we're kind of in untreaded waters right now to understand where we need to be as far as coming up with a vaccine or a treatment for something that is a pandemic in our population.
Yeah, well, there sure are a lot of moving parts here. And thank you so much for providing such a comprehensive overview of everything that's going on in the medical sector right now. And we definitely know you'll be sure to keep our audience up to date with all the latest developments. Thanks so much, Allison.
Thank you, Alyssa. I appreciate it.